What is going on, guys? Today we are looking at all of the EX Pokemon and seeing which one comes out on top. Is there a fan favorite, which I feel like if you've played the game enough, you probably know the answer to that, or is there some that can sneak in there with all of the decks that we've been given over the course of these, I'd say 2 packs, but I mean in general it's one and a mini set more so than anything. So let's get straight into there. We also will be using Pokemon Meta to have a look through a few of these decks as well, which are going to help in terms of just seeing which is the most popular, what is being used, and also what is being used with different types of cards. So for instance, if we are looking at the Pikachu deck, obviously this one's going to be a fan favorite amongst everybody. It's obviously going to be in that kind of top category. I don't think there's any question there. With Pikachu in itself, it's a very top deck. It's easy to set up, especially now you do have the basic Pikachu and also a bit of Raichu combination. It used to be just the Pikachu and Zapdos linked. Now you can use Zapdos on its own if you really want, but realistically, the Pikachu is where it's at. And you'd kind of utilize Pikachu, Zapdos, and then maybe something else. You'd kind of go for a Zebra Striker. You could now go for a Pikachu and Raichu combination as well, which is pretty good in itself as well when you're leading up to it. So it is a very common deck that does do a lot of damage. So I think putting these two together is only right, to be honest. I think both of them come as a package deal. I very rarely ever see just a Zapdos, whereas something like a Celebi, I don't well, actually, to be fair, I do see Exeggutor with Celebi, so bad analogy there. If we was to go, to be fair, all of them go together really. I don't really see much of a Machamp, to be honest. I know more than likely I'd see it with a Marowak, but there's a big chance that I see him with a Golem, because that's a massive card now, or I'll see it with a Primeape or something, maybe not going heavy on them EXs anyway. Then obviously we're looking at another deck. We'll go for a Pidgeot. Pidgeot. We'll go for a deck there. It's one of the ones that actually I've not really used massively. I've definitely come up against it, but the problem is Celebi is so just powerful and quick, it really doesn't do the damage that I'm kind of going against. So I'll have a look at a couple of decks. Obviously Greninja's going to be a massive one here. Huge ability on him. We've got Drowsy and Hypno as well as a throw-off. And then we've obviously got the Pidgeot. Doesn't matter if it's EX or not. You are going to get the ability on this one though, because that could be a big one. Once during your turn, you may switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Interesting, to be fair. Whereas with this one, you have got Scattering Cyclone. Let's see if I can find this card. We'll go away from the deck. Let's have a look at the top cards, because it should be able to find it pretty simple. We've got it here. So it is, this tag does 20 more damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So obviously in the total, you could look at 140. I mean, that's probably going to go far down the list in terms of that specific card. Not talking about the deck in itself in that one, but if you went with the other Pidgeot that's not an EX, you're going to get the bonus of only being a 1 point for killing it, I suppose, or you go for the 2 points, and maybe, yes, you could do a 140, but I'm going to put that as the kind of lower one here. I do think Celebi deserves a top spot, most definitely. We've utilized that deck massively this time round. Superior is absolutely beautiful with this. I would say as well, utilizing Exeggutor in this, if you can as well, could be a nice battle, because if you're not necessarily being able to get Celebi in, you could go with Exeggutor first, because it seems to be quite an easy one to get going. It is just a 1 energy, and you've just got to flip a heads, and you could get a potential 80, which is absolutely brilliant on 1 energy. 2 turns, 1 energy, that's fantastic. But then in the background, you could then be linking up these, and then benching up your Celebi, because obviously, I don't need any more with Exeggutor. I could just store it on Celebi, and if I've got 2, that's even better. So to be fair to it, I could say that could join in here. When it comes to the Venusaur then, that's going to be the big one, because I do think with Venusaur, I don't really like a 3-tier evolution that much, unless the deck is set up perfectly. It's why Superior, I keep saying it wrong. Whenever I go with Superior, I'm not necessarily a massive fan, but once it's there, it's great, because it just needs to be on the bench. It doesn't need to be front and center. I'm mainly using it for its ability. Whereas Venusaur, you do need to get it set up. You need to then put energy into it. It's very easy if you don't have something attacking, hence why you'd use Exeggutor as well. While setting it up, it's very unlikely that you get it going. There's very few times where someone's using a Blastoise. Charizard's a bit different because of obviously the Moltres, but a Blastoise, if they don't get the Misty off, or a Venusaur, and they very rarely ever get to it in my opinion. It's just never really on my forefront. I do think once it's there, the damage is fantastic, so I'll happily sit it with a B tier. Which then we go into the fire deck, because obviously they all are relatively the same. You have got Moltres, who will be the lead, and then you've either got your Articuno, you've either got your Arcanine or your Charizards, because I looked there. You've either got them two to go in as kind of the next battle up. Obviously with the Moltres, you use the Inferno Dance. If you find that they're trying to use a Celebi and match it up, you just keep going for the Heat Blast and just keep using the Inferno Dance until you get there, and then just blast it away. Charizard comes in after that, or Arcanine comes in after that, and you just wipe out Celebi in one hit. It's a very nice deck without Sabrina, obviously. So I do really like this deck. Charizard, if you can get him there, is brilliant. I normally personally go for one or the other. So it'd be Moltres and Arcanine or Moltres and Charizard. I get that can be a little bit more harder with the Charizard side of stuff. So maybe having a 1 on the Growlithe and Arcanine, or potentially something else that can attack in the meantime. You'd just then be able to kind of boost up your Charizard that little bit more, because it does need the 4 energy, needs to get the free tier evolution, and once it's there, it's absolutely fantastic. But you will also need to put 2 energy every time. So if you're not already having the 5 energy, the 6 energy on it, to then be able to do a turn and then do a turn again, just in case you're not quite on points, you are going to need that with Charizard, which makes him that little bit harder to go with. I personally would say Moltres and Arcanine would be the top tier for me. I'd put them really up there, but I'm going to go with a solid A. I think Arcanine is fantastic. He obviously does 20 damage to himself, so you need to make sure that you are getting rid of them. When you're looking at a Mewtwo that's not being hit, if you're looking, obviously Celebi is going to be fantastic for that. You're only just going to beat out Pikachu. Zapdos, if you don't use the Giovanni, is going to be able to withstand it. If then you go with the Thunder and Hurricane back, likely chances Arcanine is not going to survive. So it's not necessarily a full wipeout on absolutely everything. A great deck then, another fantastic one. RNG needs to be massive, but if you've got Misty in your team, then you are hoping for them heads. We have got the likes of Blastoise, Starmie, Articuno, Lapras, and also now Gyarados. Starmie's just a great starter anyway. 2 on the energy, 90 damage given. It's a fantastic hit straight off the bat. You could then start whacking up your Articuno. You could then obviously put your Vaporeon in so you could bring stuff out and put more on. You can obviously throw a lot of Gyarados in this as well. I think Gyarados has definitely been taking the storm at the moment, especially with that Vaporeon card. The ability, if you can do it, is absolutely fantastic. Obviously throwing in a Greninja. Druddigon I'm seeing as a more tanky hold-on Pokemon. Because he's not an EX, he's able to kind of withstand 2 people, and then you could really start getting your Gyarados up as well, which is always nice. If you manage to get the true 2 Druddigon on the bench as well, you can survive a Sabrina by swapping in between them, and if they can't hit you out in one, then obviously they're either not hitting you for damage, meaning you can continue to kind of wipe up, or you are obviously taking damage, but they're also taking damage as well. Once you get the Gyarados there, 140, plus getting rid of a random energy as well, is always a very interesting one. I think it's a cracking card. Don't know if I'd quite go with any of them being the absolute top tier. Very similar to Venusaur. Blastoise again is another hard one to get up there to get the energy. Does only need 3 compared to the others as well, which is nice. And you do have the ability for Misty. But what I've seen of Misty is it's very rare that you ever get more than 2 heads now. Normally it's just 1 and done. I think I saw recently in the past week and a half, 1 person get 5 heads. Other than that, they have nerfed it to a masses. I do think Starmie is a cracking one. Articuno will go there as well. And also Gyarados. Lapras, on the other hand, another one that can be utilised pretty well. More than likely is being utilised with other stuff. You're looking at your Greninja. You'd probably look at a Starmie with it as well. It is just going to be healing 20 damage, as well as then getting the free energy on it. It gives an 80 damage as well, so very good against the fire. But it is one of them Pokemon that is a basic, so you can put in straight away. But it is kind of just, that's it. That's all you've got from it. So it is very, very standard. I think now we've got quite a lot of options we can go with. I'd kind of put it one under. I think Starmie is a great Pokemon to get because of the 90 with 2 energy, whereas Lapras was almost that tank to start with. It's a basic. You can put one in, and it takes a little bit of damage. It's not going to be out first and foremost, so it's going to be just like that. Mew and Mewtwo. I think it's quite obvious. Both of them are absolutely outrageous. Mewtwo in itself is still an incredible Pokemon. I don't think it will be beaten for very long without necessarily having anybody else come in, like another Mewtwo. With the obvious Psychic Sphere, the Psy Drive, it's a great combination. You've got early damage with the 2. You've got excellent damage with the 4 as well, plus throwing in the Guard's ability, then throwing in a cheeky Mew as well if you wanted. You've got the hacking on it. I kind of don't know. Gnome hacking? I think that's how you say it. Obviously, that's going to be a great ability that you can use, or great attack that you can use. If you're coming up against a Celebi, it's a great one there. If you're going against something that's got a massive hit rate, you're looking at a Gyarados, you're looking at a Charizard. If you throw that in with the 4 energy on, because you've obviously got Guard as well, you can really ramp up them abilities. It does do very well, and it is a specific scenario, so that's why you always fall back on the Mewtwo. But just having one of them, because Mewtwo normally, this deck would have a basic Mewtwo in, just as kind of like the Druddigon, where you just put it in just because. You can obviously do the same with Mew, and if it works out, you find that they're going down a grass route, it's perfect to put in, and it's great Pokemon to have. It's one of the best, in my opinion, anyway. Gengar, then, just to go with the Psychic route. One of the ones that just hasn't had the card yet, in my opinion. I think it's decent once you get it there. Obviously, if you throw in a Mew with it, it's going to be not a bad shout. When obviously you are looking at it, you have obviously got, in fact, where we go, top cards. Let's go search Gengar. There it is. Just because I can't see it on the others. I know some people say you can't really see it on these, like it's harder to read, but you've got ability as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent can't use any support cards from their hand. That is a great ability if you are on the upper hand. If they're on the upper hand, they've got a Celebi, something like that, then it might be a little bit more daunting because you've kind of got to go toe to toe with them. But if you got it like sit on the 3rd turn, you've got Gengar, you've got Gas in your hand, you've put it straight on the top, you then got Haunting, you then go to Gengar. If they've not managed to set themselves up yet, that's going to be a brilliant card. So in specific scenarios, it's not going to be terrible. I think for me, it would be kind of just under the Blastoise because of the links with it. Realistically, almost the focus would be on Mew, more so than Gengar. Gengar's going to be that byproduct. If you can get him in, he's going to be fantastic. But if you can't, he's kind of just being left there, really. Wigglytuff, another one that can be used with many different decks. It is a colourless deck as well. It is definitely throwing more focus now, especially with the likes of Weezing, with Grimer, with Arbok. There is a great kind of combination that you can do. I don't know if there's any more decks that people are using there. A lot of them should be about the same, to be honest, because I do think that deck just works really, really well with Wigglytuff. Obviously, you can put them to sleep once actually attacking. You can sing them to sleep with Jigglypuff as well, if you manage to get I think if they manage to get the tails, obviously they will stay asleep. It's going to be a great Pokemon to be able to have in. So I think that is a great one for more of the strategic play, more so than anything. I think it's got a potential to be used right. Obviously, if you're using Koga well, if you're using the Weezing and the Arbok well as well, it is just that extra ability to have to be able to put them to sleep and then potentially get them poisoned and just keep them there and keep rocking them around. But it does take a lot of RNG to be able to get the deck right, but also a bit of skill to kind of plan your moves ahead. So I would say a solid B. I don't know if I'd quite go with A, because I do think with a lot of these Pokemons, the main difference with a lot of the S's is it does high damage, it's easy to get on with, and it's very rarely kind of countered too much. The only counter really that I've seen for Celebi is going against a Moltres Charizard deck, but even then, if your Celebi is out first, you've managed to get your deck right, it's very rare that you do lose against it, unless they've got a specific plan for it. Which leaves our fighting types to the end. We have got Marowak, Machamp, and also Aerodactyl. I was going to say Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl, obviously, your opponent can't play any Pokemon from their hand to evolve their active Pokemon, meaning you'd have to go on the bench. So if they've got their Charmeleon in their active spot, they'd have to go to the bench with a Charmeleon to then evolve it to the Charizard and bring it back. Very good if you get it in. Obviously, you've got to use the old Amber first and then move it into the Aerodactyl. You can throw it in with then a Marowak, who's very good for the 2 energy to potentially do the 160 damage, but requires a lot of RNG in that, in my opinion. Whereas, obviously, you've got the double energy for 80 for the Aerodactyl, plus then the ability as well. Only takes 2 turns to get him in there if you get the old Amber first. It's a solid deck, which then leads us to the Machamp, which I very rarely see. I could see that happening with the Mew. You've obviously got the Machop, the Machoke, and the Machamp. It's just a free energy, Mega Punch 120. No ability, no nothing. So it's definitely going to get a better card in the near future. A lot of them are going to be, like I said, using the Druddigon as almost the kind of holding Pokemon to get Machamp in. Obviously, its weakness is Psychic, so that's going to be the hardest point with Machamp, is the fact that you've got a lot of Mewtwo's coming in as the decks. So the very rare chance that you don't go against them, you need to make sure that you give it going. Because obviously with Mewtwo, the Psychic Sphere is a great starter. The Psy Shot, if they start with Mew, is already doing 40 damage before you've done your second turn. So it is going to be one of them decks that, unfortunately, because of the weakness, it is going to put it down, in my opinion. I would probably go something along this. I think Marowak can have his uses, but it is very RNG needed. You're going to need some of that luck to be able to whack the 160 on it. It could literally take Mewtwo on the second turn if it does have the RNG. But, like I said with the Misty, it's very hard to get that double heads. You're more than likely having to do 2, maybe even 3 goes at a time. Now that is going to be my list. Let me know down below which one you're using. We'll obviously keep it updated to see what EXs come out in the future. We are, or hopefully should be, getting the second set of kind of generation cards in the, I think in the next month or 2. I want to say it's end of January that we should be getting the next booster box. Let me know how you're getting on. Peace.